The space station called Haven Point floated in the darkness between two star systems. It was a meeting place for many different species from across the galaxy. Humans had built it 50 years ago, and now it served as a place where aliens could come to trade, talk, and learn about each other. Commander Lucy Grant stood near the big windows of the docking bay. She watched a silver ship move slowly toward the station. The ship belonged to the Veltari, a species that looked like large cats that walked on two legs. Their bodies were covered in thick fur that changed color depending on their mood. They had sharp claws, pointed ears, and long tails that moved when they felt strong emotions. Lucy had read many reports about the Veltari. They were proud, intelligent, and had joined the Galactic Council 200 years before humans even left their home planet. But the reports also warned about one thing. Veltari children were difficult. Very difficult. The docking clamps locked onto the silver ship with a loud clang. Lucy straightened her uniform and waited. Beside her stood Samuel Price, a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. Samuel worked as the cultural officer of the station. His job was to help different species understand each other. "You ready for this?" Lucy asked him quietly. Samuel smiled. "I raised 4 kids on a frontier colony with no running water for the first 3 years. I think I can handle some alien children." The airlock doors slid open with a hiss. Ambassador Kethron walked out first. He was tall for a Velthari, with dark blue fur that had silver streaks running through it. His golden eyes looked at everything with careful attention. Behind him came 3 young Velthari cubs. Lucy felt her breath catch in her chest. The cubs were small, reaching only to her waist. Their fur was softer and fluffier than the adults, and their eyes were huge in their faces. They looked around the docking bay with open wonder, their tails swishing back and forth with excitement. "Commander Grant," Kethron said. His voice was deep and had a purring quality to it. He held out his clawed hand in the human way of greeting. "Thank you for welcoming us to your station." Lucy shook his hand carefully. "Ambassador Kethron, the honor is ours. We have been looking forward to this cultural exchange for months." The cultural exchange was an idea from the Galactic Council. Young Velthari would stay with human families for 2 weeks. They would learn about human life, and the humans would learn about Velthari customs. It sounded simple on paper, but Lucy knew that nothing involving children was ever simple. One of the cubs, the smallest one with pale silver fur, pulled on Lucy's uniform sleeve. "Human Commander, is it true you have no fur anywhere on your bodies?" Lucy looked down at the cub. "We have a little bit of hair on our heads and some other places, but mostly, yes, we have no fur." The cub's ears stood straight up with surprise. "But how do you stay warm? How do you know when another human is happy or sad if their fur does not change color? Do you not freeze in the cold of space?" "We wear clothes to stay warm," Lucy explained, "and we show our feelings on our faces with our mouths and eyes." The cub tilted her head to one side, clearly confused by this idea. Ambassador Kethron placed a gentle hand on the cub's shoulder. "This is Mira," he said. "She asks many questions. Perhaps too many questions." "Questions are good," Samuel said warmly. "That is how we learn." The other 2 cubs came forward. One was a bit larger than Mira, with orange and brown fur that made him look like an autumn leaf. The other had dark gray fur with black stripes. "This is Thresh," Kethron said, pointing to the orange one. "And this is Pell." He pointed to the striped one. "They are all from different families on our homeworld. Their parents agreed to let them join this exchange because they believe it will help them grow." Lucy noticed that Thresh was already investigating a control panel on the wall. His small claws tapped at the buttons with curious intent. Pell had climbed halfway up a support pillar and was looking at the ceiling with great interest. "The cubs are very energetic," Kethran said. His ears flattened slightly, which Lucy knew was a sign of worry among Velthari. "I must be honest with you, Commander. Many species have tried to host our young before. It has not always gone well." "What happened?" Samuel asked. Kethron sighed. "The Thessians lost 3 ancient artifacts during a single afternoon. The Corvin had their entire ship's navigation system changed by accident. The Nalori asked us to take the cubs back after only 1 day. They said the young ones had too much energy and caused too much chaos. Lucy thought about this. She thought about human children, how they ran and screamed and broke things. She thought about her sister's kids, who had once painted the family dog bright purple with non-toxic markers. She thought about the stories Samuel had told her about his own children, building a catapult in the backyard and launching vegetables at the neighbor's house. "Ambassador," Lucy said with a confident smile, "I think you will find that humans are very good at handling chaos. We create a lot of it ourselves." Kethron did not look convinced. "These cubs are not ordinary children. They can climb any surface. They are stronger than they look. They get into everything. They ask questions that have no answers. They never seem to get tired." "So like human toddlers, but with claws," Samuel said. Kethron blinked. "I do not understand." "Human children between the ages of 1 and 3 years are called toddlers," Samuel explained. "They can destroy a room in 5 minutes. They put everything in their mouths. They have no fear and no sense of danger. They can escape from any container designed to hold them. Raising toddlers is considered a test of survival among our people." Mira had wandered over to a potted plant near the airlock. She sniffed it carefully, then looked back at the adults. "This plant smells like food. Can I eat it?" "No, sweetie," Lucy said quickly. "That plant is just for decoration, but we have lots of food you can try. Have you ever had pizza?" "What is pizza?" "It is one of the greatest inventions in human history. You will love it." Thresh had managed to open the control panel and was now looking at the wires inside. Samuel walked over calmly and closed the panel. "We will teach you about how stations work later," Samuel told the cub. "Right now, let us show you where you will be staying." Pell dropped from the pillar and landed softly on his feet. "I like this place. There are many things to climb. The Thessian buildings were too smooth. The Corvin ship was too cold. But this station has good textures." The group walked through the corridors of Haven Point. The cubs looked at everything with wide eyes. They touched the walls, smelled the air recyclers, and asked questions about every single thing they saw. "What does that button do? Why is the floor this color? Where does that tube go? Can I fit inside that vent? What is that smell? Why do humans walk so slow?" Lucy answered as many questions as she could. She noticed that Ambassador Kethron watched the humans closely, as if waiting for them to lose their patience. But Lucy had spent years dealing with difficult situations. A few curious children were not going to break her. They reached the residential area of the station. 3 families were waiting there to meet their temporary guests. Lucy had chosen these families carefully. They all had experience with children. They all had patience. And they all had volunteered for this program knowing it would not be easy. Nancy Hendricks stepped forward first. She was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and a warm smile. She had raised 3 sons on the station and now worked as a teacher. "This must be Mira," Nancy said, kneeling down to meet the cub's eyes. "I have heard you like asking questions. I like answering them. I think we will get along very well." Mira's fur brightened to a lighter shade of silver, which meant she was happy. "You are not bothered by my questions? The teachers on my homeworld say I ask too many." "There is no such thing as too many questions," Nancy said firmly. "Questions are how we understand the universe." The Okonkwo family stepped forward next. Adaeze Okonkwo and her wife Grace had 2 teenagers of their own. They also had a large dog named Captain, who wagged his tail at the sight of the cubs. Thresh looked at the dog with wide eyes. "What is that creature?" "This is Captain," Adaeze said. "He is a dog. Dogs are earth animals that live with humans as friends and family." "Does it hunt?" Thresh asked. His fur had darkened slightly, showing fear. "Only his toys," Grace laughed. "Captain is very gentle. He likes to play and sleep. Mostly sleep." Captain walked over to Thresh and sniffed him carefully. Then the dog licked the cub's face. Thresh stood frozen for a moment. Then his fur lightened and he let out a sound that was almost like a laugh. "It is warm and soft," Thresh said with surprise. "I did not expect it to be friendly." The last family was Maria Martinez Kim and her husband Henry Kim. They had 2 children of their own, 8-year-old Oscar and 6-year-old Luna. The human children looked at Pell with the same curiosity that Pell showed toward them. Can you really climb walls? Oscar asked. Yes, Pell said. Can you? No, but I can do a cartwheel. Watch. Oscar did a clumsy cartwheel in the middle of the corridor. Luna clapped her hands. Pell tilted his head and then tried to copy the movement. He ended up in a tangled pile of limbs and tail. That is harder than it looks, Pell admitted. I will teach you, Oscar said, and you can teach me how to climb walls. Ambassador Kethron watched all of this with an expression that Lucy could not quite read. After the families had met their guests and started walking to their homes, the ambassador turned to Lucy. Your people are very strange, Commander, he said. I have heard that before, Lucy replied. Is it a bad thing? I do not know yet, but I will admit that I am curious to see what happens. He paused. The other species who hosted our cubs treated them like problems to be managed. Your people are treating them like guests to be welcomed. They are guests, Lucy said simply, and they are children. Children need patience and kindness, not rules and restrictions. Kethron's tail swished slowly back and forth. We shall see if your kindness survives the next 2 weeks, Commander. Velthari cubs have broken stronger species than yours, Lucy smiled. Ambassador, with all respect, you have no idea what human children are capable of. Your cubs will fit right in. She watched the families disappear around different corners of the station, the sounds of excited chatter and curious questions fading into the distance. Whatever happened next, Lucy felt certain of one thing. The humans of Haven Point would not give up easily. They never did. Nancy Hendricks woke up on the third morning of the cultural exchange to a strange sound. It was a tearing noise like fabric being ripped apart, followed by a high-pitched whine. She got out of bed quickly and walked toward the bathroom. The door was open. Nancy stopped in the doorway and stared at the scene before her. Mira sat in the middle of the bathroom floor. Around her lay the scattered remains of a hairbrush. Not just any hairbrush, but Nancy's good brush, the one she had brought from Earth 20 years ago. It had a wooden handle and bristles made from real animal hair. Now the bristles covered every surface of the bathroom like strange snow. The wooden handle had been chewed into something that looked like modern art, and Mira's fur stood up in wild directions as if she had been struck by lightning. Oh dear, Nancy said. Mira's ears pressed flat against her head. Her golden eyes filled with tears. I am sorry, Mrs. Nancy. I am so very sorry. I did not mean to destroy your grooming tool. I only wanted to make my fur beautiful like the human children at the education center. Nancy took a deep breath. She looked at the destroyed brush. She looked at the bathroom that would need to be cleaned. She looked at the terrified cub, who clearly expected to be punished. Then she sat down on the bathroom floor next to Mira. Tell me what happened, Nancy said in a calm voice. Mira sniffled. Yesterday at the education center, I watched the human children brush their head fur. It made their hair smooth and shiny. I wanted my fur to look like that. So I borrowed your brush this morning to try it on my body fur. And what happened? The brush got stuck. Mira held up her arm, showing a patch of fur that was matted and tangled. I tried to pull it out, but it just got more stuck. So I pulled harder. And then the bristles started coming out. And then I could not stop because the bristles were everywhere and the brush was broken and I did not know what to do. Nancy nodded slowly. Can I see your fur? Does it hurt anywhere? Mira shook her head. It does not hurt. It just looks terrible. And I have ruined everything. Ambassador Kethron said we must respect human property. He said we must be on our best behavior. I have failed. Mira, look at me. The cub raised her eyes to meet Nancy's gaze. You have not failed. You made a mistake. Those are two very different things. But your brush is destroyed. Yes, it is. And that makes me a little sad because I liked that brush. But do you know what would make me more sad? If you had hurt yourself. Or if you had been too afraid to ask for help. Brushes can be replaced. You cannot be replaced. Mira's fur shifted to a slightly lighter shade, showing that she was beginning to feel less afraid. You are not angry. I am not angry. I am curious about how to fix your fur, and I am thinking about how to help you with grooming in the future. But angry? No. Being angry at children for making mistakes is like being angry at the sun for being bright. It does not make any sense. Nancy stood up and offered her hand to Mira. Let us get you cleaned up. And while we work on your fur, I will tell you a story about my son Danny. They moved to the living room, where the light was better. Nancy gathered some supplies, a wide-toothed comb she used for her own hair when it was wet, a spray bottle filled with water, and a soft towel. When Danny was about your age in human years, Nancy began as she gently worked on a tangled patch of fur. He decided that he wanted to cut his own hair. He had seen me trim his hair before, so he thought it would be easy. Did he use the right tools? Mira asked. No, he used garden scissors, the big ones we use for cutting plants. Mira's eyes went wide. What happened? He cut his hair the night before his school pictures were taken. By the time I found him, half of his head was nearly bald, and the other half had long patches sticking out in all directions. He looked like he had been in a fight with a wild animal and lost. Were you angry? Nancy laughed at the memory. For about 5 seconds, yes. Then I saw his face. He was so scared and so sorry. And I realized that being angry would not make his hair grow back. So I sat him down, trimmed the rest as best I could, and we went to school the next day. What did the other children say? They laughed at first, but Danny told them he was trying a new style. He called it the Danny Special. By the end of the week, 3 other boys had asked their parents for similar haircuts. Mira made a sound that was almost like a giggle. He turned his mistake into a fashion. Exactly. And now, 20 years later, we still look at those school pictures and laugh. It is one of our favorite family memories, not because of the perfect moments, but because of the disasters that we survived together. The comb moved through Mira's fur slowly. Nancy was careful not to pull too hard. The Velthari fur was much thicker than human hair, with a different texture that required a different approach. I do not think this comb is right for your fur, Nancy said after a while, but I know who might be able to help. She picked up her communication device and made a call to the station's medical center. Dr. Patricia Cole answered on the 3rd ring. Nancy, is everything okay? Is the cub sick? No medical emergency, Nancy assured her. But I need some advice about Velthari grooming. There was an incident with a hairbrush. Dr. Cole listened to the story and then laughed kindly. I actually have some information about this. Let me send you what I have. Within minutes, Nancy was reading through files about Velthari fur care. She learned that their fur had 2 layers, a soft undercoat and a longer outer coat. Human brushes were designed for single-layer hair and could not handle the density of Velthari fur. The bristles got trapped between the layers and then broke off. There are special tools for grooming Velthari, Nancy explained to Mira. They use wide-spaced metal teeth that can move through both layers without getting stuck. I am ordering one right now. It should arrive tomorrow. But what do we do about my fur until then? Nancy thought for a moment. Then she remembered something from the files. It says here that Velthari sometimes use water and a natural oil to smooth their fur when they do not have proper tools. Do you know what oil your people use? Mira nodded. We use the oil from a plant called velith, but I do not think you have that here. We might not have velith oil, but we have other oils. Let me try something. Nancy went to her kitchen and came back with a small bottle. This is coconut oil. It comes from a fruit on Earth. It is safe for skin and fur. Can I try putting a tiny bit on your fur to see if it helps? Mira sniffed the oil carefully. It smells nice, like something I would want to eat. You can eat it, actually, but right now, let us just use it on your fur. Nancy put a tiny amount of oil on her fingers and worked it into a particularly tangled section of Mira's fur. The effect was immediate. The fur became softer and easier to work with. The tangles loosened. Within an hour, they had worked through most of the problem areas. Look at that, Nancy said proudly. Your fur is almost smooth again. Mira ran her own hands through her fur and her whole face brightened. It feels so much better. Thank you, Mrs. Nancy. You are welcome, sweetheart. Now, let us clean up the bathroom and then we can have breakfast. They cleaned together. Mira helped pick up the bristles while Nancy swept the floor. When they found pieces of the wooden handle, Mira looked sad again. I really am sorry about your brush, I know you are, and I appreciate that you are sorry. But can I tell you something? That brush was just a thing. Things break, things get lost, things get old and worn out, but the important things like kindness and trust and family, those do not break so easily. Mira thought about this. On my homeworld, when young Veltari damage property, we are punished. We have to pay for what we broke or work to earn the replacement. Sometimes the elders yell at us. Sometimes our fur is groomed roughly as a reminder to be more careful. Nancy felt a wave of sadness at hearing this. That sounds very hard. It teaches us to be careful. It might also teach you to be afraid of making mistakes. And that is not always a good lesson. They finished cleaning and went to the kitchen. Nancy made breakfast while Mira sat at the table, still thinking about their conversation. Mrs. Nancy, why are humans so different from other species? What do you mean? The ambassador said that other species became frustrated with Veltari cubs very quickly. The Thessians were angry when things were broken. The Corvin were upset when their systems were changed. But you have not been angry at all. You have only been patient and kind. Nancy set a plate of food in front of Mira. I think maybe humans remember what it was like to be young. We remember making mistakes and being scared. We remember how much it meant when adults were patient with us instead of angry. Do all humans feel this way? Not all. Some humans are impatient and unkind, but most of us try to be good to children, even when those children make mistakes. Because we know that children are still learning, and learning often involves breaking things. Mira took a bite of her food. It was something called scrambled eggs, and she had decided after 2 days that it was one of her favorite human foods. I want to learn how to groom my fur properly, Mira said, so I do not have to destroy any more brushes. That is a good goal. When the proper grooming tool arrives tomorrow, I will teach you how to use it, and then you can teach me about how Veltari care for their fur. That way, we both learn something. You want to learn from me? Of course. Teaching goes both ways. You are not just here to learn about humans. I am here to learn about Veltari too. That is what a cultural exchange is all about. Mira's fur had returned to its normal silver color now, soft and smooth and healthy looking. But more than that, her eyes had lost the fear they had held earlier that morning. She looked comfortable. She looked happy. She looked like a child who knew she was safe. After breakfast, Nancy sent a message to Commander Lucy Grant, updating her on the situation. Lucy replied within minutes. That sounds like it went well. How is Mira doing? Nancy looked over at the cub, who was now exploring the living room with renewed curiosity, sniffing books and examining decorations. She is doing great. A little embarrassed, but I think she learned something important today. I think I did too. What did you learn? Nancy smiled as she typed her response. I learned that Veltari cubs are not so different from human children. They make messes. They try things without thinking. They feel terrible when they make mistakes. And they respond to kindness better than they respond to anger. The ambassador is going to be very interested in your report, Lucy wrote back. Tell him that his cubs are in good hands. We have survived human children. We can survive anything. She put down her communication device and went to join Mira in the living room. There was still so much to show her, so much to teach her, so much to learn from her in return. And Nancy found that she was looking forward to every moment of it, even the messy ones. Especially the messy ones. Commander Lucy Grant was eating lunch in her office when her communication device buzzed with an urgent message. She looked at the screen and saw it was from Maria Martinez Kim. Commander, can you come to our quarters? It is not an emergency, but I think you should see this. Lucy put down her sandwich and walked quickly through the corridors of Haven Point. She had been expecting problems at some point during the cultural exchange. 3 Veltari cubs could not stay with human families for 2 weeks without something going wrong. But the message had not sounded panicked. In fact, it had sounded almost amused. When she reached the Martinez Kim family quarters, Lucy pressed the door chime. The door slid open, and she stepped inside. She stopped walking and stared. The living room had been completely transformed. Every piece of furniture had been moved from its normal place. The couch was pushed against one wall, angled so that it connected to a bookshelf. The dining table had been turned on its side. Chairs were stacked in strange formations. Blankets and sheets hung from the ceiling, creating tunnels and bridges that crisscrossed the entire room. And in the middle of it all, three children moved through the chaos like it was the most natural thing in the world. Pell clung to the ceiling in one corner. His claws dug into the soft material that humans used for decoration. His tail swished back and forth with excitement. 8-year-old Oscar was climbing the stack of chairs, moving carefully from one to the next. 6-year-old Luna crawled through a blanket tunnel, giggling the whole way. "Commander Lucy," Pell called from above. "Look what we built. We made a whole path around the room that never touches the floor." Maria Martinez Kim stood near the kitchen doorway, watching the scene with a cup of tea in her hands. Her husband Henry was on the other side of the room, holding a datapad and taking notes. "How long has this been going on?" Lucy asked. "About 3 hours," Maria said. "It started with hide and seek." "Hide and seek?" "Yes." The children were playing, and Pell found a hiding spot on the ceiling. Oscar and Luna thought that was amazing, so they wanted to do it too. But human children cannot climb walls, so they had to find another way to get up high. Lucy looked at the elaborate construction of furniture and fabric. "So they built this." They built it together. Pell would show them where he wanted to go, and Oscar and Luna would figure out how to build a path to get there. They have been working on it all morning. Lucy watched as Luna emerged from a blanket tunnel and started climbing a ladder made of cushions and pillows. Pell dropped from the ceiling and caught her when she reached the top, helping her onto a platform they had created from overturned storage boxes. "The floor is lava," Luna announced seriously. "If you touch the floor, you lose." "That is correct," Pell agreed. "The floor is extremely dangerous. It is made of hot melted rock. We must never touch it." Oscar made his way across a bridge made from couch cushions. "Pell, can we connect the kitchen next? I think if we move the tall chairs over here, we can make a path to the counter." "We should ask the adult humans first," Pell said. "They seem to care about the arrangement of furniture." All three children turned to look at Maria and Henry. Their faces were full of hope and excitement. Henry looked at his wife. Maria looked at the kitchen that she had cleaned just that morning. The kitchen that would probably be covered in cushions and blankets by the end of the day. "Go ahead," Maria said. "Just be careful near the stove. It is not actually made of lava, but it can get hot." The children cheered and immediately started planning the expansion of their creation. Lucy walked over to stand next to Maria. "You are remarkably calm about this." "Commander, I have 2 children under 10 years old. My house has not been truly clean or organized since Oscar was born. This is just a bigger version of what happens every weekend." The other host families dealt with chaos, too. Nancy sent me a report about Mira destroying a hairbrush. The Okonkwo family had an incident with their sprinkler system. Maria nodded. "I heard about that. Thresh accidentally activated the water system trying to figure out how it worked. Apparently their whole living room got soaked." "How did they handle it?" "They grabbed towels and mops and cleaned it up together." Adiz said Thresh felt terrible about it, but they turned it into a learning experience. They showed him how human water systems work, and now he knows not to press random buttons. Lucy shook her head in wonder. "The Galactic Council warned us that Velthari cubs were too much for most species to handle. They said the cubs caused problems everywhere they went." "Maybe the problem was not the cubs," Maria said thoughtfully. "Maybe the problem was that other species did not know how to let children be children." On the other side of the room, Pell was teaching Oscar a Velthari climbing technique. Since Oscar did not have claws, they had modified it to work with hands and feet. "You must spread your weight evenly," Pell explained. "Do not put all your weight on one hand or one foot. Balance is more important than strength." Oscar tried the technique on the bookshelf. He slipped once, caught himself, and tried again. On the third attempt, he managed to climb up 2 levels. "I did it!" Oscar shouted. "Luna, did you see? I climbed like a Velthari." "Not quite like a Velthari," Pell said with amusement. "But very good for a human. You learn quickly." Luna tugged on Pell's arm. "Now teach me. I want to climb too." "You are smaller, so we need a different technique for you. Watch carefully." Henry looked up from his datapad. "I have been taking notes on their teaching methods. Pell is actually very good at explaining things. He breaks down complex movements into simple steps and adjusts his instructions based on who he is teaching. Velthari cubs are raised in group environments, Lucy remembered from the briefing documents. They often teach each other skills. It is part of their development. Well, it is working. Oscar has learned more about balance and body control in 3 hours than he learned in a year of human gym class. The construction continued throughout the afternoon. The kitchen was connected, then the hallway. Then the children wanted to connect their path to the bedroom, which required careful negotiation about which pieces of furniture could be moved and which could not. The bed stays where it is, Maria said firmly. But you can use the desk chair and the laundry basket. What about the tall plant in the corner? Oscar asked. Can we climb that? The plant is not strong enough to hold your weight. You would break it and hurt yourselves. Pell examined the plant thoughtfully. What if we put something next to the plant? Something that could hold weight? Then we could climb that instead and just touch the plant gently as we pass. Maria considered this. That might work. Henry, can you get the stepladder from the storage closet? The stepladder was added to the construction, then a stack of books, then a cushion that had been folded into a specific shape to create a stable platform. The children worked together, each one contributing ideas and effort. By dinner time, the circuit around the home was complete. A person could move from the living room to the kitchen, to the hallway, to the bedroom, and back again without ever touching the floor. It was not beautiful. It was not organized. But it was an achievement, and the children were incredibly proud of it. This is the best thing I have ever helped build, Pell declared. Me too, Oscar agreed. Can we show Dad the whole path? Henry put down his datapad. I thought you would never ask. He stepped onto the couch and began following the path the children had created. They guided him through the tunnels and over the bridges, cheering when he made difficult jumps and gasping when he almost lost his balance. When he finally completed the circuit and returned to the living room, all 3 children applauded. You did it, Dad, Luna shouted. You survived the lava. It was very dangerous, Henry said seriously. But I had excellent guides. They had dinner sitting on the floor because all the chairs were being used as climbing structures. They ate sandwiches and fruit, easy foods that did not require cooking or plates. Pell, Maria asked during the meal, what do Velthari children do for fun on your homeworld? Pell thought about this. We climb trees. We play chase games. We learn skills from older cubs. We explore. That sounds a lot like what human children do. It does, Pell agreed. I did not expect that. The other species we visited did not play the way we do. They sat quietly. They followed rules. They did not build things or climb things or pretend the floor was made of lava. Humans are not very good at sitting quietly, Oscar said. Neither are Velthari, Pell replied. I think that is why I like it here. You understand. After dinner, they took photographs of the construction. Henry sent them to Commander Lucy with a detailed description of how it had been built. Then they started the slow process of putting everything back in its proper place. Do we have to take it down? Luna asked sadly. We need places to sit and eat and sleep, Maria explained. But you know what? We can build it again tomorrow. Now that you know how, you can make it even better. Luna brightened at this idea. Can we make it go to the bathroom next time, so we never have to touch the floor even when we need to use the toilet? That is a big engineering challenge, but I think you 3 can figure it out. Pell helped move the furniture back, using his climbing abilities to reach high places and adjust things that had shifted. Oscar and Luna gathered the blankets and sheets. Within an hour, the home looked almost normal again. Almost. There were still a few cushions out of place, a few marks on the walls where claws had dug in, a few spots where the chaos of the day could still be seen. Maria looked at these imperfections and smiled. Are you not upset about the mess? Pell asked, noticing her expression. No, Maria said honestly. These marks tell a story. They tell the story of the day 3 children from 2 different species became friends. That is worth a few scratches on the wall. Pell's fur shifted to a warm golden color, showing that he was happy. Thank you for letting us build things. Thank you for not being angry. Thank you for playing with us. Maria knelt down to look at him directly. Thank you for including Oscar and Luna. Thank you for teaching them new things. And thank you for being patient when they could not climb as well as you. They cannot climb walls, Pell said, but they can build paths to reach the places they want to go. That is a different kind of skill. Maybe even a better one. Why do you say that? Pell thought about this for a moment. Because when you build a path, you can share it with others. When I climb a wall, only I can follow. But when Oscar and Luna build bridges and tunnels, everyone can use them. That seems more useful. Maria felt tears prick at her eyes. She pulled Pell into a gentle hug, careful not to squeeze too hard. You are a very wise young Velthari, she said. I am just observing, Pell replied. That is what cubs are supposed to do. Watch, learn, and grow. Outside the window, the stars of the galaxy shone down on Haven Point. Somewhere out there, countless species were going about their lives, many of them convinced that humans and Velthari were too different to ever truly understand each other. But inside this small family home, 3 children had proven that understanding does not require being the same. It just requires being willing to play together, to build together, and to see the floor as lava together. The floor is lava. It was a silly game. But somehow it had become something more. It had become a bridge between worlds. The Galactic Council chamber was enormous. It had been designed to hold representatives from over 200 different species, and today it was nearly full. Beings of all shapes and sizes sat in their designated sections, their attention focused on the central platform where Ambassador Kethron stood. The 2-week cultural exchange had ended, and now the council wanted a full report. They wanted to know what had happened when Velthari cubs were placed with human families. Most of the council members expected to hear stories of disaster and failure, just like all the previous exchanges. Kethron stood tall, his dark blue fur gleaming under the lights. Behind him, a large holographic display showed images and data collected during the exchange. Council members, Kethron began, I stand before you today to report on the Human Velthari Cultural Exchange Program. I must say that the results were not what I expected. A low murmur passed through the chamber. The Thessian delegate leaned forward, her crystalline body catching the light. Ambassador Kethron, we have all heard the stories about Velthari cubs. During their visit to our cultural center, they destroyed 3 artifacts that had survived 10,000 years. We were told that humans would struggle just as much. I remember, Kethron said calmly. I also remember what happened with the Corvin. The Corvin representative, a mechanical being with a body made of smooth metal, spoke in a flat voice. The cubs reprogrammed our navigation systems. We ended up 20 light years off course. It took us 3 days to correct the error. And the Nilori, another delegate added. They returned the cubs after only 1 day. They said the energy level was too much. Kethron nodded at each of these statements. Yes, all of those things happened. The Velthari cubs have a reputation for causing problems wherever they go. Many species have told us that our young are too curious, too energetic, too destructive. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. The humans were different. The holographic display flickered and showed the first image. It was Mira, surrounded by the destroyed remains of a hairbrush, her fur standing up in wild directions. On the 3rd day of the exchange, a cub named Mira attempted to groom herself using a human hair tool. The tool was not designed for Velthari fur. It was destroyed completely. As expected, the Thessian delegate said. What punishment was given? None. The chamber fell silent. None? The Thessian repeated. The human host, a woman named Nancy Hendricks, sat down on the floor next to Mira. She asked what happened. She listened to the explanation. She told Mira that she was not in trouble. Then she spent 3 hours finding the right way to care for Velthari fur and ordered proper grooming tools. The display changed to show Nancy and Mira together, both of them smiling, Mira's fur smooth and healthy. Mrs. Hendricks is now writing a guide for future human hosts who may care for Velthari cubs. She has become an expert in Velthari grooming, and Mira has learned not only how to care for her own fur, but also that making mistakes does not mean being bad. Kethron moved to the next image. It showed the inside of the Okonkwo family home, with water spraying everywhere and a young Velthari cub, looking horrified. A cub named Thresh accidentally activated the home's water emergency system. He was curious about how it worked and pressed buttons to see what would happen. The entire living room was flooded. And the humans did not punish him for this? The Corvin asked. No. They handed him towels and mops and cleaned up the mess together. Then they showed him exactly how the water system worked, explaining every part so he would understand. By the end of the day, Thresh had learned more about human engineering than any Velthari in our records. The display showed Thresh sitting with the Okonkwo family, all of them laughing about something together. The humans have a phrase. They call it a teaching moment. When something goes wrong, they do not see it as a failure. They see it as an opportunity to learn. Kethron moved to the next image. This one showed the Martinez Kim living room transformed into an obstacle course, with furniture stacked and blankets hanging everywhere. A cub named Pell discovered that human children love to play just as much as Velthari cubs do. Together, they built a path around the entire home that never touched the floor. They called it the floor's lava. It was messy. It was chaotic. The furniture was moved and the walls were scratched. He paused and looked around the chamber. And the human parents helped them do it. They helped create the mess? The Nalori delegate asked in disbelief. The Nalori were small beings who valued perfect order in all things. They did more than help. They joined in the game. They climbed through the tunnels and crossed the bridges. They praised the children for their creativity and problem-solving. And when it was time to clean up, everyone worked together to put things back. The display showed Maria Martinez Kim hugging Pell, the cub's fur glowing golden with happiness. The humans did not see our cubs as problems to be managed. They saw them as children to be loved. Kethron stepped back from the center of the platform and gestured for someone else to come forward. Commander Lucy Grant walked into the light, her uniform clean and her expression calm. Council members, Lucy said, I have been asked to share the human perspective on this exchange. Please, the Thessian delegate said. We are very curious to understand how you managed what so many others could not. Lucy smiled. The answer is simple. We did not manage them at all. Could you explain? Human children are chaotic. They break things. They ask too many questions. They have endless energy. They get into everything. They do not understand danger until they experience it. Raising human children requires patience, flexibility, and a high tolerance for mess. She looked around the chamber at all the different species watching her. When the Velthari cubs arrived, they behaved exactly like human children. They explored. They broke things. They made mistakes. This was not surprising to us. It was familiar. But other species have young as well, the Corvin pointed out. We were once children too. True. But how were you raised? From what I understand, Corvin children are placed in structured learning environments from a very young age. Your education focuses on rules, order, and proper behavior. Making mistakes is discouraged. The Corvin delegate did not respond, but Lucy saw a slight nod. The Thessians value beauty and perfection. Your children are taught to be careful, to protect precious things, to move slowly and deliberately. A curious child who touches everything would be seen as misbehaving. The Thessian delegate's crystalline form seemed to dim slightly. The Nalori require quiet and calm. Your children are trained to be still, to think before acting, to consider consequences. A loud, energetic child would be overwhelming. Lucy spread her hands. Humans are different. Our children are raised to explore, to ask questions, to try things even if they might fail. We build our homes knowing that things will be broken. We plan our days knowing that chaos will happen. When a child makes a mess, we do not see it as bad behavior. We see it as normal. But surely there must be limits, the Nalori delegate said. Surely you punish bad behavior. We have limits, yes. We protect our children from real danger. We teach them right from wrong. But we understand that learning takes time. A child who breaks a rule is not a bad child. They are just a child who has not finished learning yet. Ambassador Kethron stepped forward again. This is what I wanted the council to understand. The humans succeeded where others failed because they did not try to change our cubs. They accepted them as they were. He looked at the display, which now showed all three cubs with their host families, everyone smiling and happy. Mira, Thresh, and Pell returned to the Velthari homeworld 3 days ago. They have not stopped talking about their experience. They want to go back. They have made friends that they plan to keep for the rest of their lives. They have learned things about humans that no amount of reading could teach. And what did the humans learn? The Thessian asked. They learned that Velthari cubs are not problems to be solved. They learned that our species has more in common than anyone expected. They learned that patience and kindness work better than rules and punishment. Lucy nodded in agreement. The council recommended this exchange as a diplomatic exercise. What happened was much more than that. Real connections were formed. Real friendships were built. The human families who hosted these cubs have asked to participate again. They want to host more Veltari children in the future. They want more chaos? The Nilori delegate sounded genuinely shocked. They want more connection, Lucy corrected. They want to keep building bridges between our species. And they understand that building bridges sometimes means getting your hands dirty. The chamber was quiet for a long moment. Then the Thessian delegate spoke again. Ambassador Kethran, what do you recommend for future exchanges? Kethran did not hesitate. I recommend that we establish a permanent program between humans and Velthari. I recommend that we send human children to Velthari families as well, so the exchange goes both ways. And I recommend that other species study how the humans approached this situation. Perhaps they can learn something. You believe humans have something to teach the council? The Corvin asked. I believe every species has something to teach and something to learn. The humans reminded me of a truth that many of us have forgotten. Children are not small adults. They are growing beings who need space to explore, permission to fail, and adults who love them through the mess. Lucy stepped back from the platform, her part in the testimony complete. But before she returned to her seat, she added one final thought. The galaxy is vast and full of different species. We all have different ways of living, different values, different approaches to life. But I think the one thing we all share is the desire for our children to grow up happy and healthy. The methods might be different, but the goal is the same. She looked directly at the council members. When you hosted our cubs, you tried to make them behave like your children. That is why it did not work. When we hosted your cubs, we let them be Velthari. We adapted to them instead of expecting them to adapt to us. That is the human way. It is messy and imperfect, but it works. The vote came an hour later. The council approved the permanent exchange program unanimously. They also established a committee to study human approaches to child development, with representatives from 12 species who wanted to learn more. As the chamber emptied, Kethron found Lucy near the exit. Commander, I owe you an apology. For what? When I arrived at Haven Point, I doubted your species. I thought the cubs would overwhelm you, just as they overwhelmed everyone else. I was prepared to manage disasters and smooth over problems for 2 weeks. And instead, I watched your people welcome our cubs with open arms. I watched them laugh at chaos instead of fighting it. I watched them turn every problem into a game, every mess into a memory, every mistake into a lesson. He paused, his tail swishing slowly. Your species is very young in the galaxy. Many older species look down on you for this. They think you are primitive, immature, too emotional. But I think they are wrong. What do you think? Kethron considered the question carefully. I think your youth is your strength. You have not yet forgotten what it means to be a child. You have not yet learned to value order over growth. You are still wild enough to play, still brave enough to make mistakes, still kind enough to forgive them. Lucy smiled. That might be the nicest thing anyone from the council has ever said about humans. It is simply the truth, and I think the galaxy could use more of it. They walked out of the chamber together. Two representatives of two very different species who had found something unexpected. Understanding, respect, and perhaps even friendship. The cultural exchange was over. But something much more important had just begun. The departure ceremony was held in the main gathering hall of Haven Point. It was the largest open space on the station, usually used for celebrations and important events. Today, it was filled with flowers, banners, and decorations in both human and Veltari styles. Commander Lucy Grant stood near the front of the room, watching the families gather. The three cubs were surrounded by their host families, and the scene was both happy and sad at the same time. Happy because of the bonds that had been formed. Sad because it was time to say goodbye. Ambassador Kethron entered the hall with his formal robes flowing behind him. He walked to the center of the room and raised his hands for silence. Today marks the end of a journey and the beginning of something new, he announced. 2 weeks ago, 3 young Velthari came to live with human families. They came as strangers. They leave as family. Mira stood close to Nancy Hendricks, her small hand holding tightly to the human woman's fingers. Her fur had a nervous tint to it, shifting between light and dark as her emotions changed. "Mrs. Nancy," Mira said quietly, "I have something for you." She pulled out a carefully wrapped package and placed it in Nancy's hands. Nancy opened it slowly and found a beautiful grooming brush inside. It was made in the Velthari style, with wide metal teeth and a handle carved from a dark wood that grew only on the Velthari homeworld. "This is a first grooming brush," Kethron explained when he saw what Mira had given. "In Velthari tradition, when a cub learns to groom themselves properly, they give their first brush to the person who taught them. It is one of our highest honors." Nancy's eyes filled with tears. She knelt down and pulled Mira into a tight hug. "Thank you, sweetheart. I will treasure this forever." "You taught me more than grooming," Mira said, her voice muffled against Nancy's shoulder. "You taught me that making mistakes does not make me bad. You taught me that asking questions is good. You taught me that some adults are kind even when you break their things." "You taught me things too," Nancy replied. "You taught me that curiosity is a gift, not a problem. You reminded me why I became a teacher in the first place, because watching young minds grow is the most beautiful thing in the universe." They held each other for a long moment. Around them, similar scenes were happening with the other families. Thresh stood with the Okonkwo family. He had grown especially close to their dog captain, who sat at his feet with his tail wagging. Adias and Grace each had a hand on his shoulders. "I will miss your home," Thresh said. "I will miss the food and the games and the way you explain things without getting angry. I will miss Captain most of all." "You can come back any time," Ades told him. "Our door is always open for you." "And we have something for you," Grace added. She handed him a small device. "This is a communicator programmed with our contact information. You can call us whenever you want, no matter how far away you are." Thresh turned the device over in his hands, his fur brightening with surprise and happiness. "You want to talk to me even after I leave?" "Of course we do. You are part of our family now. Distance does not change that." Thresh carefully tucked the communicator into his travel bag, treating it like the precious gift it was. Then he bent down to say goodbye to Captain. "Be a good dog," he told the animal seriously. "Protect your humans. They are very kind and deserve to be safe." Captain licked his face in response, making Thresh laugh. Pell was the last to say goodbye. He stood between Oscar and Luna, the three of them wearing matching bracelets that Luna had made. The bracelets were simple things, just colored strings woven together, but to the children they meant everything. "The floor is still lava," Pell said solemnly. "It will always be lava. No matter where I go in the galaxy, I will remember that." "Promise?" Oscar asked. "I promise." Luna clutched a small stuffed animal that Pell had given her. It was shaped like a Velthari creature she had never heard of before, soft and round with big eyes. She had named it Fluffy and declared it her most prized possession. "Will you come back?" Luna asked, her lower lip trembling. Pell knelt down to look at her directly. "I will come back. I do not know when, but I promise I will. And until then, we can send messages and pictures and videos. We can tell each other about our days. We can stay friends even across the stars." Maria Martinez Kim watched her children say goodbye to their Velthari friend. Her heart ached with the bitter sweetness of the moment. Henry stood beside her, his arm around her waist. "They grew up a little this week," Henry said quietly. "They did," Maria agreed. "All 3 of them." The official farewells began. Ambassador Kethron made a speech about the success of the exchange and the hope it represented for future relations between humans and Velthari. Commander Lucy Grant spoke about the importance of understanding between species. Representatives from the Galactic Council sent recorded messages of congratulations. But the real goodbye happened in the small moments, in the extra hugs that lasted too long, in the whispered promises to stay in touch, in the tears that fell freely on both human and Veltari faces. When it was finally time for the Cubs to board the shuttle that would take them back to their ship, the families gathered at the docking bay for one last moment together. Nancy Hendricks had brought cookies, the same kind she had made for Mira on her first night in the human home. Mira took one and bit into it, her fur lightening with the memory of happiness. "I will never forget the taste of these," Mira said. "They taste like kindness." "I will send you the recipe," Nancy promised. "Maybe your family can learn to make them." "I would like that very much." Ades Okonkwo had brought Captain one last time, knowing how much Thresh loved the dog. The cub spent his final minutes on the station sitting on the floor with Captain, stroking the animal's fur and whispering things that only the two of them could hear. "Dogs are wonderful creatures," Thresh told the family. "I am going to request that we research bringing Earth animals to the Velthari homeworld. I think my people would enjoy them." "Just make sure they are ready for the responsibility," Grace said with a smile. "Dogs need a lot of love." "So do cubs. We are ready." The Martinez-Kim children had made presents for Pell. Oscar had drawn a picture of their greatest construction project, the day they made a path around the entire home without touching the floor. Luna had written a story, spelled poorly but full of heart, about three friends who went on adventures together. Pell accepted both gifts with visible emotion. His fur changed through several colors as he looked at them. "I will keep these forever," he said. "When I am old and have cubs of my own, I will show them these and tell them about the time I made friends with humans." "Tell them we said hi," Oscar said. "I will. I will tell them everything." The shuttle's engines began to warm up. The boarding call sounded through the docking bay. The cubs gathered together, their host families standing nearby. "I do not want to go," Mira whispered. "I know," Nancy said gently. "But this is not the end. It is just the beginning. You will come back. We will visit you. The friendship does not stop just because we are far apart." Ambassador Kethron stepped forward. "It is time, young ones. Say your final farewells." The cubs moved through the group, hugging each human they had grown to love. There were tears and laughs and promises repeated again and again. "Stay in touch. Do not forget us. We love you." Commander Lucy Grant watched the scene with a full heart. She had managed many diplomatic events in her career, but none had felt as important as this one. Treaties could be broken, alliances could fail, but the bonds formed between these children and their host families would last forever. The cubs finally walked up the boarding ramp. At the top, they turned and waved. The humans waved back, some of them crying openly. "Thank you for everything," Mira called out. "Come back soon," Nancy shouted back. "The floor is lava," Pell yelled. "Always," Oscar and Luna screamed in response. The shuttle doors closed. The engines roared to life, and slowly the silver ship began to pull away from the station. The families stayed in the docking bay long after the shuttle had disappeared into the darkness of space. They held each other, shared memories, laughed about the chaos and the messes and the broken things. "Do you think they will really come back?" Luna asked her mother. Maria looked down at her daughter, at the bracelet on her wrist that matched the one Pell wore somewhere among the stars. "I think they will, and even if it takes a long time, we will wait for them. That is what family does." Later that evening, Commander Lucy Grant sat in her office writing her final report on the cultural exchange. She tried to put into words everything that had happened, but she found that some things could not be reduced to official language. How do you describe the moment when a child realizes they are loved despite their mistakes? How do you capture the joy of children from different worlds playing together as if they had known each other their whole lives? How do you explain that sometimes the best thing adults can do is step back and let the chaos happen? She finished her report and sent it to the Galactic Council. Then she wrote a personal message to Ambassador Kethron. The exchange was a success by any measure, but the numbers and reports do not capture what really happened here. What happened was that three young Velthari taught us something about ourselves. They reminded us why we became explorers in the first place. Not to conquer or control, but to connect. To find family among the stars. She paused, thinking of the children and the families and the messy, beautiful chaos of it all. The galaxy says humans are strange. Perhaps we are. But our strangeness made room for three cubs who needed to be accepted as they were. Our willingness to adapt, to play, to embrace the mess, that is not a weakness. It is our greatest strength. She ended the message with a final thought. The cubs tried brushing their fur with human tools, and the brush lost all its bristles. But in the trying, they learned something important. And so did we. Sometimes you have to break a few brushes to find the right way to take care of each other. Outside her window, the stars continued their slow dance across the sky. Somewhere out there, three cubs were flying home with hearts full of memories and hands full of gifts. Somewhere out there, human children were already making plans for their next visit. The exchange was over. But the story was just beginning. In the years that followed, the human Velthari cultural exchange became the model for all interspecies programs. Children from dozens of worlds visited human families, and human children traveled to distant planets. Not all exchanges were perfect. There were misunderstandings and accidents and broken things, but the humans approached each challenge the same way they had approached the Velthari cubs, with patience, with kindness, with a willingness to adapt, and with the understanding that sometimes the best way to learn is to let children be children, no matter what species they happen to be. The floor is lava. It became a phrase that spread throughout the galaxy, a symbol of the human approach to raising young. It meant something simple but powerful. Play together. Make messes together. Build things together. And when you fall, laugh about it and try again. Mira, Thresh, and Pell grew up to be ambassadors themselves. They spent their lives building bridges between species, teaching others what they had learned on a small space station called Haven Point. And whenever they met humans, they would share a knowing smile and say those four words that meant so much. The floor is lava. And the humans would smile back and say, always. The end.